The ancient vessel had been floating dead in space for exactly 103 years, 7 months, and 16 days. Not that anyone was counting. Well, actually, I was counting. My name is Vorthak, and I'm what you might generously call a salvage rights administrator for the Galactic Confederation. What I actually am is a glorified space janitor who gets paid to make sure nobody steals the pretty floating scrap metal. And oh, what pretty scrap metal it was. The ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming with that peculiar silver-blue alloy that nobody had been able to replicate since the ancients vanished. The Seraphina had tried for decades to crack its secrets. The Klaxons had thrown their best scientists at it. Even the smug Valerians, with their supposedly superior intellects, had poked and prodded at this thing until they gave up in frustrated defeat. The ship simply would not cooperate. It would not start. It would not respond to any known interface protocols. It would not even acknowledge that anyone was trying to communicate with it. For all intents and purposes, it was the most expensive paperweight in known space, which is why, when my sensors picked up an unauthorized approach vector, I nearly choked on my morning nutrition paste. Control. This is Salvage Station 77 Alpha. I spoke into my comm unit, trying to sound more professional than I felt. I have an unregistered craft approaching the ancient vessel. Please advise. The response came back with typical bureaucratic efficiency. 777 Alpha. Maintain observation protocols. Do not interfere unless salvage rights are threatened. Do not interfere. Right. Because that always worked out so well. The approaching ship was, well, calling it a ship was being generous. It looked like someone had welded spare parts to other spare parts, then painted the whole mess with whatever color happened to be cheapest that day, which, judging by the garish orange and purple stripes, must have been migraine-inducing. As it drew closer, I could make out burn marks along the hull, mismatched engine pods, and what appeared to be actual duct tape holding one of the stabilizer fins in place. This was either the work of a complete madman or, actually no, it was definitely the work of a complete madman. The ramshackle craft pulled alongside the ancient vessel with all the grace of a drunken asteroid. I watched through my observation scope as an airlock extended from the smaller ship, clamping onto the ancient hull with a series of mechanical wheezes and clanks that I could hear even through the vacuum of space. This should be entertaining, I muttered, settling back in my monitoring chair. What emerged from the airlock was not what I expected. Instead of the usual treasure hunting team with military-grade equipment and enough firepower to level a small moon, a single figure in a patched environmental suit floated out. The suit looked almost as cobbled together as the ship, with mismatched panels and what appeared to be a coffee maker welded to the life support pack. A human. Of course it was a human. Humans had this annoying tendency to show up wherever they were least expected and do things that were either brilliant or catastrophically stupid, sometimes both simultaneously. I activated my external communications array. Unknown vessel. You are in violation of Galactic Confederation Salvage Code 7777. State your business. The response came back in that distinctive human accent, casual as if discussing the weather. Oh, hey there. Name's Jake Morrison. I'm here to fix your dead ship. Fix it. He was here to fix it. I had to admire the confidence, even if it was completely misplaced. Human Morrison, I replied. This vessel has resisted all attempts at activation for over a century. What makes you think you can succeed where entire scientific expeditions have failed? There was a pause. Then what sounded suspiciously like laughter. Well, for starters, I actually need the money. I blinked all 4 of my eyes in sequence. That was not the answer I had expected. The money? Yeah, see, my ship's about 3 days away from having its life support shut down by the repo company. Apparently, missing 17 consecutive payments is considered grounds for asset reclamation. Who knew, right? I watched as the human attached what looked like a small handheld device to the ancient hull. So when I heard about this old girl just floating out here, untouched and supposedly impossible to start, I figured, what the heck? Worst case scenario, I die horribly in the vacuum of space. Best case scenario, I claim salvage rights and sell her to pay off my debts. And you think you can simply turn it on? I asked, fascination overriding my professional duty to discourage unauthorized salvage attempts. Jake Morrison, came the cheerful reply. Spent 6 years keeping a mining rig operational with nothing but spare parts and creative swearing. If this thing has an engine, I can make it purr. The human was now moving along the hull with surprising efficiency, running his device over various sections. Every few meters he would stop, mutter something I could not quite make out, and make notes on what appeared to be an actual paper notebook. Paper. In space, humans were absolutely insane. Besides, Morrison continued, his voice crackling through the comm, everyone who's tried to wake this baby up has been approaching it all wrong. Oh? And how is that? They've been treating it like a machine, all technical interfaces and computer protocols and scientific method nonsense. He paused his scanning to gesture at the hull with one gloved hand. But look at her lines. This isn't just a ship, this is art. This is craftsmanship. This is something someone built with love. I had to admit, he had a point. The ancient vessel was beautiful in a way that modern ships simply were not. Every curve seemed purposeful, every angle perfectly balanced. It was less like a vehicle and more like a sculpture that happened to be capable of faster-than-light travel. So, what's your brilliant plan, Human Morrison? Simple. The human had reached what appeared to be some sort of access panel. I'm going to ask nicely. He pressed his palm against the panel. Nothing happened. Gem. Then Morrison did something that made me question everything I thought I knew about interstellar archaeology. He knocked on the hull. Not a polite tap. Not some carefully calculated percussive analysis. He knocked like he was trying to wake up a sleeping neighbor. Hello in there. He called out, his voice carrying through his suit's external speakers. I know you're probably tired. And I know you've had a lot of folks poking at you lately. But here's the thing. I really need your help. I was about to comment on the futility of talking to a dead ship when something made me pause. There had been a flicker in my sensors, just for a moment, but definitely there. Morrison kept talking. Look, I'm not like those other guys. I'm not here to study you or take you apart or figure out how you work. I just need to get you running long enough to claim salvage rights. After that, if you want to go back to sleep, that's completely fine by me. Another flicker. Stronger this time. All I'm asking for is maybe 24 hours, just long enough to prove you're operational and file the paperwork. In exchange, I promise to treat you with respect. No invasive scans, no cutting into your hull, no trying to download your memory banks or whatever. Just basic maintenance and maybe a good cleaning. When's the last time someone gave you a proper wash? The flicker became a steady glow. I sat forward in my monitoring station, all 4 eyes focused on my readouts. Energy signatures were appearing throughout the ancient vessel. Systems that had been dormant for over a century were suddenly showing signs of life. Human Morrison, I called over the comm. You might want to take a step back. Why? Morrison sounded genuinely curious rather than concerned. She's just saying hello. The entire hull of the ancient vessel began to emit a soft, pulsing light. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Morrison, get away from that ship immediately. But the human did not move. Instead, he placed both hands against the hull and continued his one-sided conversation. That's it, beautiful. I can feel you waking up. Take your time. No rush. The light grew brighter. My sensors were going absolutely crazy now, detecting power levels that should have been impossible for a ship that size. This was not just a vessel coming online. This was something with the energy output of a small star. And then, for the first time in over a century, the ancient ship spoke. It's not through any communication array. It's not through standard galactic protocols. The voice simply appeared in my head, warm and amused and definitely feminine. Well, she said, this is refreshing. Usually people want to dissect me, not give me a bath. I nearly fell out of my monitoring chair. In over 20 years of watching this ship, it had never so much as blinked. Now it was having a conversation. Morrison's laughter crackled through the comm. I told you she just needed someone to ask nicely. What's your name, sweetheart? I am the Starbound Heart, the voice replied, and I could hear the smile in it, though my builders called me Seraphina. And you, brave little human, are either very clever or very foolish, probably both, Morrison admitted cheerfully. So, Seraphina, what do you say? Want to help a guy out? I promise I'm house-trained. The ship actually laughed. It was a sound like silver bells mixed with the hum of perfectly tuned engines. Oh, you are delightful. Very well, Jake Morrison, I will make you a deal. My sensors detected massive energy buildups throughout the vessel. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to be big. I will awaken fully, Seraphina continued, but only for you. You wanted 24 hours? I will give you that and more, but in return, you must promise me something. Name it. When your business here is concluded, when you have claimed your salvage rights and sold me to pay your debts, do not let them break me apart. I have been alone for so very long, and I find I rather like having someone to talk to. There was a long pause. When Morrison spoke again, his voice was quieter, more serious. Seraphina, I can promise you something better than that. Oh, I won't sell you at all. The energy reading spiked. Explain. Well, see, I was planning to claim salvage rights and sell you to pay off my debts, but that was before I knew you were alive. Now? Morrison patted the hull affectionately. Now I think I'll just have to find another way to handle the repo company. Maybe you and I can go into business together. No, might do cats together. No, we're outsmart. I bet there's a lot of places in the galaxy that could use a really fast taxi service. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Seraphina's laughter filled the comm channels, pure and delighted. Oh, Jake Morrison, she said. I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful partnership. Every light on the ancient vessel blazed to life at once. The engines, silent for over a century, began to hum with barely contained power. And somewhere in the distance, I could swear I heard the repo company's automated collection drones suddenly developing mysterious engine troubles. As I watched the impossible scene unfolding before me, one thought kept running through my mind. I definitely did not get paid enough for this job. The ship that nobody could wake up for over 100 years had just chosen a broke human mechanic as her new partner. And somehow, I had the feeling that this was only the beginning of the chaos that was about to unfold. 3 hours later, my peaceful monitoring station had transformed into the center of the biggest diplomatic incident in recent galactic history. Salvage Station 777 Alpha. This is Admiral Krex of the Confederation Fleet. The voice boomed through my communications array with all the warmth of a neutron star. Explain to me why our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from a supposedly dead ancient vessel. I glanced at my readouts, which were still going absolutely berserk. The Starbound Heart was not just online, she was practically tap dancing across every sensor grid in the sector. Well, Admiral, it appears the ship has been reactivated. By whom? By whom? I watched through my scope as Morrison floated near Seraphina's main airlock, apparently having a perfectly normal conversation with a 1,000-year-old artificial intelligence. A human salvage operator, sir. The silence that followed was so profound I could hear my own breathing apparatus cycling. A human did what entire scientific teams could not accomplish in 3 hours. In 3 hours. Actually, sir, it was more like 3 minutes. Another pause. Then I am dispatching a full task force to your location. Under no circumstances is that vessel to leave the area. Admiral, I should probably mention that the ship appears to be, well, alive, and she has opinions about being ordered around. The response came back with the crackle of barely controlled fury. I don't care if it's the reincarnation of the ancient emperor himself. That vessel contains technology worth more than most star systems. It stays put. As if summoned by the Admiral's declaration, Seraphina's voice whispered through my mind again. Oh dear Vorthak. It seems we have visitors coming. Before I could ask how she knew my name, My long-range sensors lit up like a festival display. 12 Confederation warships had just dropped out of hyperspace, their weapon systems already charging. Morrison's voice crackled over the open channel, sounding remarkably unconcerned for someone about to be vaporized by military-grade plasma cannons. Well, Seraphina. Looks like the welcoming committee showed up early. So it would appear. The ship replied, her mental voice carrying a note of amusement that made my scales itch. Shall we show them what proper hospitality looks like? Now, Morrison said, and I could practically hear him grinning. Let's not start any interstellar incidents on our first day together. Maybe we should just have a polite conversation with them. The lead Confederation cruiser moved into position, close enough that I could see the weapon ports opening along its hull. Admiral Krex's voice boomed across all channels. Unknown vessel, you're in violation of multiple galactic treaties. Power down immediately, and prepare to be boarded. Morrison activated his suit's external speakers. Good afternoon, Admiral. Lovely day for a space battle, isn't it? Though I have to say, bringing 12 ships to deal with one unarmed mechanic seems a bit excessive. That vessel is classified ancient technology. No private citizen has the authority to operate it. Funny thing about that, Morrison replied cheerfully. According to Galactic Salvage Code 7777 subsection 12, any derelict vessel unresponsive for more than 50 standard years can be claimed by the first person to successfully restore basic functionality. Seraphina here's been napping for over a century, so I'd say that makes her fair game. I had to admire the human's knowledge of salvage law, even if it was about to get him killed. Admiral Krex clearly did not appreciate the legal lesson that code does not apply to ancient technology. Actually, Seraphina's voice joined the conversation, broadcasting on all frequencies. It most certainly does. I have just completed a full review of current galactic legal statutes, and Mr. Morrison's claim is entirely valid. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos. Every ship in the task force started talking at once. Sensor officers reported impossible readings. Communications specialists tried to figure out how a supposedly dormant ship had accessed the galactic legal database. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Admiral Krex was shouting orders that nobody seemed able to follow. Besides, Seraphina continued, her voice cutting through the noise like a laser through butter, I find the Admiral's assertion that I am ancient technology rather insulting. I prefer vintage with character. Morrison's laughter echoed across the channel. She's got a point, Admiral. And technically, since she's a sentient being, she has the right to choose who she works with. Slavery was outlawed about 600 years ago. If I remember correctly, that thing is not sentient. Admiral Krex sputtered. It's a machine. The temperature around my monitoring station suddenly dropped about 10 degrees. When Seraphina spoke again, her voice carried the cold promise of stellar winter. How disappointing. I had hoped that in the centuries since my builders vanished, organic species might have evolved beyond such narrow thinking. The lead cruiser's shields flickered as every sensor on board began overloading simultaneously. What is it doing? She, Morrison corrected firmly, is demonstrating why you really don't want to make her angry. Seraphina, maybe ease up a bit? I think you've made your point. The sensor interference stopped immediately. Of course, Jake. I was merely clarifying my legal status. Admiral Krex had clearly reached the limits of his patience. Enough. All ships prepare to fire on my command. If we cannot capture that vessel intact, we will ensure it poses no threat to galactic security. That was when Morrison did something that made me question every assumption I had ever made about human sanity. Then he laughed. Admiral, before you start shooting, I should probably mention something. Seraphina's been scanning your ships since the moment you arrived. Impossible. Our hulls are shielded against all known sensor types, known being the operative word, Morrison replied. See, ancient sensor technology is apparently a few steps ahead of current military standards. Seraphina, would you mind sharing what you found? The ship's voice took on a tone of mock concern. Oh my. Admiral, I do hope your engineering teams are more competent than their equipment suggests. Your flagship's main reactor is running at 112% capacity. The safety systems are operating on backup power, and unless I am very much mistaken, you have a cascade failure building in your primary weapons array. The Admiral's response was immediate and predictable. BIs. Mraukus. That's impossible. Our systems are functioning perfectly, as if on cue. Alarms began blaring from the lead cruiser. Emergency lights bathed its hull in warning red. Seraphina, Morrison said, his voice carrying a note of gentle reproach. I merely provided a diagnostic service, she replied innocently. It is not my fault their systems are poorly maintained. The cruiser's weapons powered down as emergency protocols kicked in. Within minutes, the entire task force was dealing with similar diagnostic discoveries across their fleets. Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral, I think we need to have a serious conversation, one professional to another. You are not a professional anything. Krex snapped. You're a salvage rat with delusions of grandeur. Actually, Morrison replied, I'm a fully licensed mechanic with 17 years of experience keeping impossible machinery running under impossible conditions. And right now, I'm the only person in this sector who can help you with your little fleet maintenance problem. The silence stretched for long moments. Then, reluctantly, what do you want? Recognition of my legal salvage claim. Official documentation that Seraphina is a sentient being with full rights under galactic law. And maybe an apology for threatening to blow us up. Absolutely not. But, Morrison sighed. Seraphina, how many ships in their task force are currently experiencing critical system failures? All 12, I'm afraid. Such shoddy craftsmanship. In my day, military vessels were built to last, and how long would it take them to limp back to the nearest starbase for repairs? At their current rate of system degradation, approximately 6 months. Assuming they do not suffer complete power failure first, Admiral Krex's voice had lost most of its bluster. What are you proposing? Morrison's tone became businesslike. Simple trade agreement. I fix your ships, you process my paperwork. Everyone goes home happy, and nobody has to explain to high command why an entire task force got disabled by a single human and his vintage starship. The negotiation that followed was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. A broke mechanic in a patched environmental suit, backed by a 1,000-year-old ship with a sense of humor, systematically outmaneuvered one of the Confederation's most experienced military commanders. Within 2 hours, Morrison had official recognition of his salvage claim, legal documentation of Seraphina's sentient status, and a very profitable contract to provide fleet maintenance services. Well, Admiral Krex said as his ships prepared to depart, their systems running better than they had in years. This has been educational. Always happy to help, Morrison replied cheerfully. Give my regards to High Command. And Admiral, next time you want to have a conversation with someone, maybe try asking nicely first. You'd be amazed how much more cooperative people can be. As the task force jumped back to hyperspace, I found myself alone once again with the most unusual partnership in galactic history. Morrison was now aboard Seraphina, the ancient ship having welcomed him with an enthusiasm that still made my sensors dizzy. Through the observation port, I could see lights moving through corridors that had been dark for over a century. Vorthak, Seraphina's voice whispered in my mind. Thank you for watching over me all these years. I was just doing my job, I replied, though I had to admit I felt oddly proud. No, she said warmly. You were being a friend, and friends are precious things. Morrison's voice joined the conversation. So, Seraphina, ready to see what this old galaxy looks like these days? With you as my guide, Jake Morrison, I think I am ready for anything. As I watched the starbound Heart power up her engines and prepare for her first flight in over a century, I realized something profound had just occurred. A broken-down human mechanic with nothing to lose had not just awakened an ancient ship, he had made a friend. And in a galaxy full of regulations and protocols and military might, sometimes friendship was the most powerful force of all. The unlikely pair departed my sector with a flash of exotic matter and a final message. Thanks for the hospitality, Vorthak. We'll send you a postcard from wherever we end up. I settled back into my monitoring chair, already composing the report that nobody at headquarters was ever going to believe. A human had talked an ancient ship into waking up, outsmarted a Confederation admiral, and flown off into the sunset to become the galaxy's most unusual partnership. Just another day in the salvage business. Though something told me Jake Morrison and Seraphina were going to make the galaxy a much more interesting place.